Look at these faces. Innocent children. 10-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 7-month-old baby.
Was he able to talk?
Yeah.
James?
Yeah.
What did he say to you?
I want me now.
That's quite a bit cold, very eerie, the fact that he actually said it in the way James would have said it.
I want me now.
You think you've seen evil? You haven't seen anything yet. 2 10-year-olds abduct a toddler in broad daylight and brutally torture him for 3 hours before placing his body on railway tracks. A father strangles his pregnant wife, then savagely murders his 2 daughters and stuffs their bodies into oil tanks. A 4-year-old runs to daycare, breathless, crying about a green dragon he saw slaughter his grandparents. A 7-month-old baby was kidnapped, but his parents knew exactly where his tiny body was hidden all along. A 5-year-old girl was forced to listen as her own mother was beaten to death in the next room. Some children were victims, some were witnesses, and some were the killers themselves. Children caught in the darkest corners of humanity. Each story is more devastating than the last. A daughter begging her father for mercy he would never give. A child running for his life from a murder scene. What you're about to witness isn't just true crime. This is betrayal at its most unthinkable. This is evil wearing the mask of family. CCTV footage that captured murders in progress. Interrogations where killers finally break. Witnesses whose testimonies sent killers to prison. Confessions that will make your blood run cold. 5 child true crime cases that will haunt you forever. On February 12, 1993, at exactly 3:42 p.m., CCTV cameras captured something that would haunt Britain forever. A grainy black and white image shows a 2-year-old boy being led away by 2 older children. His name was James Patrick Bulger. He would never see his mother again. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about childhood innocence, justice, and the capacity for evil. This is the case that divided a nation and continues to spark debate 32 years later. James Patrick Bulger was born on March 16, 1990, in Kirkby, Merseyside. A bright, curious toddler with blonde hair and an infectious smile, James was the light of his family's world. His mother, Denise, worked part-time while caring for her young son. His father, Ralph, was a devoted parent who doted on his boy. February 12, 1993, started like any other day. Denise planned a quick shopping trip to the New Strand Shopping Center in Bootle with James and her friend. It was a routine visit to familiar shops. James wore his favorite blue anorak and held his mother's hand as they walked through the mall. But James had no idea that 2 other children were watching him. 2 10-year-old boys who had been truanting from school that day. 2 boys who had already been shoplifting, already causing trouble. 2 boys whose names would become synonymous with one of the most shocking crimes in British history. Robert Thompson and John Venables. At 3:40 p.m., Denise entered A.R. Times Butcher Shop on the lower level of the mall. James, tired and restless, tugged at her hand. For just a moment, a single devastating moment, she let go to pay for her purchases. James wandered toward the shop entrance, and that's when they struck. The CCTV footage tells a chilling story. At 3:42 p.m., cameras captured Robert Thompson and John Venables approaching James near the butcher's shop. One boy takes his left hand, the other his right. To casual observers, it might have looked like older brothers helping a younger sibling. But this was an abduction. The grainy footage shows James being led out of the shopping center, past dozens of shoppers, past security guards, past every adult who might have saved him. The image of that tiny figure between 2 taller boys would become one of the most haunting photographs in criminal history. Denise realized James was missing within minutes. Security was alerted. The mall was searched, but James was already outside, already walking toward what would become a 2.5-mile journey of terror.
Just buying myself the butchers. Turned away from for a minute and then I looked down and he's gone.
We do have a number of video photographs from the precinct itself showing the boy quite clearly, apparently following the 2 youths that we're very anxious to trace It may well be that the child did follow them, so it is very important that we do trace these two boys.
If you've got me baby, just bring them back.
What happened next would expose the darkest corners of human nature and the tragic failure of a dozen well-meaning adults who could have saved a child's life. For the next 3 hours, James Bulger walked through the streets of North Liverpool in broad daylight. Multiple witnesses saw the 3 boys. Multiple adults had chances to intervene, but no one did. Bus passenger Kathleen Richardson saw 2 boys roughly handling a toddler from her window. She watched one boy swing the child up violently, prompting her to shout in anger, but the bus moved on. Delivery driver Mark Pimblett observed 2 boys dragging a younger child who was trying to dig his heels in. In his mirror, he saw one boy give what he described as a persuading kick under the child's arm. He drove away. At the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, Malcolm Walton noticed a small child crying his eyes out while being led by 2 older boys. The crying was so distressing that Walton remembered it vividly when questioned later. But the most haunting near-miss came when 63-year-old Irene Hitman encountered the trio near Breeze Hill Reservoir. Walking her dog, she was drawn by crying and found 2 10-year-olds with what she assumed was their baby brother. James had visible injuries, a lump on his forehead and another on the top of his head. "Hurry up and get him home," Hitman told the boys. "Let his mum see his head." They assured her they would take him home. She walked away, satisfied she'd done the right thing. Elizabeth McCarrick came closest to saving James's life. Near Walton Lane Police Station, she saw the boys asking for directions. Something felt wrong. She took hold of James's hand, intending to take him to the police herself. For a moment, salvation was literally in reach. But one boy calmly reasserted control. "It's all right. We'll take the boy to the police station." McCarrick, convinced by their reasonable manner, let them go. They walked away from the police station and toward the railway line. Each witness had a story. Each had a reason for not intervening. They thought the boys were brothers. They believed the children were taking James to safety. They trusted in the fundamental goodness of childhood. They were wrong. On February 14, 1993, Valentine's Day, a group of children playing near the old Walton and Anfield railway line made a discovery that would traumatize them forever. They found the battered body of James Patrick Bulger. The crime scene told a horrific story. James had been tortured and killed using bricks, stones, and an iron bar. Blue modeling paint, stolen earlier by the boys, was splattered across his body. His injuries were so severe that the pathologist would later describe them as consistent with either a high-speed road traffic accident or a severe beating. But perhaps the most disturbing detail: his body had been placed across the railway tracks in an apparent attempt to disguise the murder as an accident. The plan failed when no train passed before his discovery. Detective Superintendent Albert Kirby of Merseyside, police took charge of what would become one of Britain's most intensive child murder investigations. The evidence was overwhelming and heartbreaking. Blood on footwear matched James's DNA profile with a 1 in a billion certainty. The blue modeling paint found on the body matched paint discovered on both boys' clothing. Pattern analysis showed that facial bruising was consistent with kicks from a specific shoe type worn by one of the perpetrators. Most damning of all, paint traces inside the toe cap of one boy's shoe, indicating the tremendous force used in the attack. The forensic evidence painted a clear picture. This wasn't a single moment of childhood rage. This was sustained, deliberate brutality that lasted for hours. The case that seemed impossible to solve was cracked by technology that was revolutionary for 1993: enhanced CCTV footage. Police released the grainy images of James being led from the shopping center. The photographs were broadcast on national television and published in every newspaper. The public response was immediate and massive. One caller recognized the distinctive jacket worn by one of the boys. Another identified the walking style. Within days, investigators had names: Robert Thompson, born August 23, 1982, and John Venables, born August 13, 1982. Both boys were 10 years old, making them the youngest defendants in a murder case in modern British history. When police arrived at their homes on February 18, 1993, they found two very different children. Thompson was described as cocky and defiant. Venables broke down immediately, hysterical at the prospect of prison. What they discovered during interrogation would divide public opinion for decades to come. The interview room recordings revealed two children struggling with the magnitude of what they'd done.
He said that the two of you were in the Strand and that you saw the little boy.
We never.
This interview's been tape recorded. I'm Detective Sergeant Roberts. Now, what's your full name?
Robert Thompson.
What do they call you? Robert or Bobby?
Robert.
I think Bobby's a more friendly name. Do you agree?
Yeah.
I just want to know a little bit about you now, okay? What's your hobby then?
Skipping school.
Skipping school, is that right?
That's not a hobby, that's a profession, Bobby, when you do it as well as you.
Bobby, I came round to your house this morning, didn't I?
Yeah.
What did I say to you?
Listening.
Correct. What for?
James.
James, what about James?
That you said was suspicion of murder him.
Well, very well remembered. Did you ever see him in the Strand? You shook your head again.
Yeah.
Bobby, was that on the day that we're talking about? Was that on this Friday? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were going up the escalators. They were coming through the doors that there's loads of.
Who was he with?
No.
Little James.
His mum.
With his mum. He was just running around, was he, James?
Yeah.
Will you tell me exactly what? Slowly, right?
Just said come here. And then he grabbed his hands and walked up to stand.
How did he come up to John?
How did he come up to John?
James.
No, he was walking down the strand.
Who was? James?
The baby.
Was he?
I told him to take him back.
He did what?
Told him to take him back.
You told him to take it back?
All right, Bobby. No, you're not getting all the blame. You're just asking your son. You're trying to find
We'll make the point.
Wait a minute, Bobby.
John Venables initially denied everything. When confronted with CCTV evidence, he became hysterical.
And he said that you took him by the hand and led him out of the Strand shops.
We never. He's a liar.
Calm down.
Alright, come on.
You see, little James is following me up on stage. Right? But on another picture, John, it appears as if John had hold of his hand.
Yeah, well, why are you questioning me and John as well?
I forgot that was true.
God knows truth, I'm telling you, we never. He was too scared. He was probably too scared.
Robert Thompson took a different approach. Across 3 interviews, he gradually admitted more details.
John saying to us that he wasn't down at the Strand.
But we were.
I know you were at the Strand, but why should he lie to us by saying that he wasn't in the Strand? He's scared of saying that he was down in the Strand because something happened, didn't it?
After the baby got took.
Yeah.
Not by me.
I know the truth. I believe I know the truth.
I was there.
That's
You
right.
waved.
Correct, but I know there's a lot of things that have gone on.
Yeah, well, do you know what you mean? That killed him. It wasn't. I never even killed him.
2055.
Are you able to go home tonight?
We don't know yet, we don't know yet. And I want you to tell
I don't
Rachel.
need to answer any more questions, do I?
Hey, come on now, Bobby.
That one I want to kill him and I've got a baby of my own.
I'm trying
Who
to.
wants to kill a baby? I kill my own, wouldn't I?
Was he able to talk?
No.
James,
Yeah.
what did he say to you?
You want me?
That's That's quite a bit cold, very eerie, the fact that he actually said it in the way James would have said it.
Yeah, we was, but we never saw any kids there. We never got any kids.
So you were in Bootle New Strand?
Was you in Bootle Strand?
We never got a kid, Mum. We never got a kid.
Would you, I must ask you not to get angry with it.
I never got the boy. I never killed him.
The tape had to be stopped while his solicitor calmed him down. After his mother reassured him she would still love him, Venables began to confess, but always blaming Thompson for the worst violence.
So we walked up to him and we were walking around with him and I took his hand.
And whose idea was it to walk towards him?
Mine.
Was it?
Then it was Robert's idea to kill him.
A short while ago, as is detailed on your custody record out there, you had a conversation with your mum and you then requested that myself come into the room. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was it you told us?
That I killed James. And we went outside to take him out.
What for?
Don't know, he said let's throw him in the water. He was persuading him, he said kneel down and let's look at the water and all that, but he wouldn't. Because when we wouldn't get him down, Robert kicked him up and threw him on the floor and that's where he got his bump on his head.
What were you gonna, why were you taking on to Long Village?
Don't know, we didn't know what to do.
You walk along to where?
To the train track. We took him on the rail shop and started throwing bricks at him. When he bricks, because Robert said pick a brick up and throw it, and just threw it on the floor.
But Thompson always cast himself as the reluctant participant.
We certainly admitted throwing stones and things like that.
But he's blaming you for a lot of things.
Yeah, but why
You understand?
blaming me?
Well, I want to know the truth, right? The whole truth. There's other things going on, isn't there?
They both started blaming each other.
I'm gonna end up getting all the blame because I've got blood on me.
We're asking you, son, and we want you to tell us the truth, that's all. Not give the blame to you or anything else. But it's only the truth that we're
Yeah, but
concerned about.
Johnny threw a brick in his face.
Can we just go through slowly, right, what John did with what, right? You said he got hit with a brick first, did he? Then, what did he do?
Another brick.
He threw another brick.
What was Robert saying while he was doing all this?
We were saying stay down, you stupid thing and all that.
Why did he want him to stay down?
I don't know. I wanted him dead, probably.
Where did the stones and the bar hit him?
In the head.
And you said the bar knocked him out?
Yeah. Onto the railway track.
And what happened then?
No, he was just lying there. Just finished now because I can't speak anymore.
More than 20 hours of tape were recorded, capturing confessions, denials, and heartbreaking breakdowns. Each boy painted himself as the victim of the other's influence. Each claimed the other was the real killer. The tapes reveal something disturbing about childhood psychology. Even at 10 years old, both boys understood enough about their crime to lie, to deflect blame, and to minimize their involvement. But the evidence didn't lie. November 1993, Preston Crown Court. Two 10-year-old boys sat in the dock on raised chairs so they could see over the edge. They were flanked by social workers, facing a jury of 9 men and 3 women who would decide their fate. The trial was unprecedented. Never before had children so young been tried for murder in an adult court. The proceedings were not broadcast live at that time, but still the case turned into a national obsession. The prosecution, led by Richard Henriquez, Queen's counsel, methodically presented the evidence. The CCTV footage, the witness testimony, the forensic evidence, and most damaging of all, the boys' own confessions. The defense teams faced an impossible task. David Turner, Queen's counsel, representing Thompson, argued his client was present but not the aggressor. He painted Thompson as passive, claiming Venables was the violent one. Lawrence Lee, Queen's counsel, representing Venables, argued the opposite. He claimed Thompson was the ringleader and Venables was merely following along. Each lawyer blamed the other boy, mirroring exactly what the defendants had done in their police interviews. Dr. Eileen Vizard, a consultant psychiatrist, testified that both boys understood the difference between right and wrong. This destroyed any hope of a diminished responsibility defense. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for just over 6 hours. On November 24, 1993, both Robert Thompson and John Venables were found guilty of the abduction and murder of James Patrick Bulger. Judge Mr. Justice Moreland delivered a sentence that shocked the nation. The killing of James Bulger was an act of unparalleled evil and barbarity. Both boys were sentenced to detention at Her Majesty's pleasure, effectively a life sentence for children. They became the youngest convicted murderers in modern British history. But the legal battle was far from over. The question became, how long should 10-year-old murderers serve in prison? Judge Moreland recommended 8 years as the minimum term. The Lord Chief Justice increased it to 10 years. But then Home Secretary Michael Howard made a decision that would change British justice forever. Bowing to public pressure and a petition signed by 280,000 people, Howard increased the minimum term to 15 years. He cited the public concern over the case and the need for public confidence in the criminal justice system. The boys' lawyers immediately appealed. In 1997, the House of Lords delivered a landmark ruling that would reshape how Britain handles juvenile justice. The law lords declared that politicians could not set prison tariffs for children based on public opinion. Justice, they ruled, must be blind to popular sentiment. Only judges, not politicians, could determine appropriate sentences. The European Court of Human Rights went further in 1999, ruling that trying 10-year-old children in adult Crown Court proceedings violated their right to a fair trial. The intimidating atmosphere, they found, prevented the boys from participating effectively in their defense. Both rulings sparked national debate about how Britain treats child criminals. Should 10-year-olds face adult justice? Can children that young truly understand the consequences of their actions? The questions remain unanswered today. In June 2001, after serving 8 years, both Thompson and Venables were released on life license with new identities. They were 18 years old. Dame Elizabeth Butler-Sloss granted them unprecedented lifelong anonymity orders. Their new names, addresses, and appearances could never be published. Anyone breaching the order faced contempt of court charges. The decision enraged the Bulger family and much of the public. Why should child killers be protected by the very justice system their victim never got to experience? But legal experts argued the order was necessary. Without anonymity, both young men faced vigilante justice and possible murder. They had, the courts reasoned, served their sentences and deserved a chance at rehabilitation. The anonymity orders remain in force today. In 2019, they were updated to cover social media, making it illegal to post photographs or identifying information online. Dozens of people have been prosecuted for breaching the orders. The protection is absolute and permanent. Robert Thompson vanished into his new life. Since his release in 2001, he has never reoffended. He successfully integrated into society, found work, and by all accounts became a productive citizen. According to reports, he has maintained his new identity so completely that even close friends don't know his past. Thompson continues to live quietly under lifelong parole supervision, with his next review scheduled for 2029. John Venables took a different path. In 2010, just 9 years after his release, Venables was recalled to prison for possessing indecent images of children. He was convicted and sentenced to 2 years. Released again in 2013, he was back in custody by 2017 again for child abuse images. This time, police also found a pedophile manual detailing how to abuse children. On December 13, 2023, the parole board rejected Venables' latest appeal for freedom, citing ongoing risk to public safety. He remains in prison today. The contrast couldn't be starker. One killer successfully rehabilitated, the other repeatedly reoffending in ways that echo the original crime's victimization of a child. The debate revealed ongoing frustrations about transparency in the case. Why was Venables released twice despite showing signs of continued deviance? Why are the public kept in the dark about parole decisions involving child killers? The Bulger family has never stopped fighting for answers. Denise Fergus, James's mother, has spent 30 years campaigning for victims' rights and proper justice. Ralph Bulger, James's father, has taken a different approach, focusing on child protection and supporting other bereaved families. Both parents have shown remarkable dignity in the face of unimaginable loss. But questions persist. Should children who kill be treated differently from adult murderers? Can rehabilitation work for the most serious juvenile offenders? Both Thompson and Venables came from troubled backgrounds. Thompson was the fifth of 7 children in a chaotic household. His father abandoned the family. His mother struggled with alcohol. Several of his brothers had criminal records. Venables lived with his parents and siblings, but the family was marked by domestic violence and instability. He had behavioral problems at school and was known for cruelty to younger children. Many people said that millions of children face similar challenges without becoming killers. What made Thompson and Venables different? James Patrick Bulger never got to start school, never learned to read, never played football, never had friends, never grew up. He existed for just 2 years, 10 months, and 27 days. His death robbed the world of whatever he might have become. A teacher, perhaps, or a doctor, or simply a loving father to children of his own. We'll never know. 32 years later, Britain remains divided. Some believe the justice system worked. 2 child killers were punished, 1 was successfully rehabilitated, and society was protected. Others see a failure of justice. A murdered child, released killers, and a system that prioritizes criminals over victims. Both perspectives contain truth. Justice is imperfect because humans are imperfect. 2 10-year-olds who destroyed an innocent life. A system that struggled to deliver justice. But what happens when the killer isn't a child but a father who had everything to lose? What you're about to see next will show you just how far someone will go to hide their darkest secrets. On June 1st, 2018, 3 months before the murders, Chris and Sean and what seemed to have the perfect life. A beautiful suburban home in Frederick, Colorado. 2 adorable daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste. And Shanann was 15 weeks pregnant with their 3rd child. But beneath this picture-perfect surface, something very dark was brewing. Chris Watts, 33 years old, worked as an equipment operator for Anadarko Petroleum. A steady job, a reliable income, the kind of man any woman would want to build a life with. Shanann was a successful businesswoman, working with Louvel, a health and wellness company. She was vibrant, loving, and absolutely thrilled about their growing family. From their social media posts, they looked like the American dream. Family vacations, birthday parties, date nights. The kind of family that made others jealous. But those closest to Sean and began to notice something deeply disturbing. Chris was becoming different, cold, distant, almost like a stranger. In the weeks leading up to August, Shanann confided to friends that her husband was acting strange. He seemed completely disconnected from their life together, from their children, from their unborn baby. She had even canceled the gender reveal party for their 3rd child. But why? Because something felt terribly wrong at home. Chris would come home from work and barely speak. He showed no excitement about the new baby. It was as if he was living with complete strangers. Shanann tried everything to fix their marriage. Couples therapy sessions, romantic gestures, heart-to-heart conversations. But nothing worked. Chris seemed to be slipping away from her, and she had no idea why. What she didn't know was that Chris was living a devastating double life. While Shanann was desperately trying to save their marriage, Chris was betraying everything they had built together. At his job site, he had met someone, a coworker named Nicole Kessinger, 30 years old, attractive, single, available, and Chris wanted her more than his own family. But there was one huge problem. He was married with children and another baby on the way. So Chris did what lying killers do best. He lied. He told Nickel that his marriage was completely over, that he was getting divorced, that Shanann knew about their relationship and was fine with it. Every single word was a pure lie. Nickel had no idea she was dating a married man. She had no idea about the pregnant wife at home. She had no idea that she was about to become the catalyst for one of the most horrifying family murders in American history. On August 10, 2018, Shanann left for a business trip to Arizona. She would be gone for just a few days, working to build her Louvel business and support their growing family. This should have been a normal work trip, a chance for Chris to bond with his daughters while mommy was away. Instead, it became the perfect opportunity for Chris to live his secret fantasy. The moment Shanann's plane took off, Chris transformed into a completely different person. While his pregnant wife was working thousands of miles away, Chris took Nickel on romantic dates. They went to the Lazy Dog Sports Bar and Grill in Erie, Colorado. The bill? Over $60. Money that came from the joint account he shared with Shanann. Money that was meant to support his pregnant wife and children. But Chris didn't care. He was intoxicated by his new life with Nickel. A life without responsibilities, without crying children, without a pregnant wife. For those 3 days, Chris got to pretend he was single and free. But reality was about to come crashing down. On August 13, 2018 at 1:48 a.m., Shanann's flight landed back in Denver. She was exhausted from her business trip, but excited to see her family. Her friend Nicole Atkinson picked her up from the airport. During the drive home, Shanann seemed worried. She told Nicole that Chris had been acting even stranger while she was away, barely returning her texts, cold and distant on phone calls. She was starting to suspect that something terrible was happening to their marriage. Nickel dropped Shanann off at home around 2 a.m. Shanann climbed into bed next to her husband, probably thinking about their relationship, about their children sleeping peacefully down the hall, about the baby growing inside her. She had no idea that she had just walked into her final hours. She had no idea that the man lying next to her had already made a monstrous decision. And she had absolutely no idea that by morning, her entire family would be gone forever. What happened in that house in those dark morning hours would shock investigators. Chris savagely killed his entire family that morning. His pregnant wife, his 2 innocent little girls. But the real horror wasn't just the murders, it was what he did after. The sick performance, the calculated lies, the way he fooled millions of people. But here's where the real questions arise. How would police catch his lies? What would finally expose this master manipulator? And most importantly, how long could his twisted performance last? By 2 p.m. that same day, Shanann's friend Nicole was panicking. Shanann had missed an important doctor's appointment for her pregnancy. She wasn't answering her phone or texts. Her car was in the driveway, but nobody was answering the door. This was completely unlike Shanann. She never missed doctor's appointments. She always answered her phone. Nickel called Chris at work. His response would later send chills down investigators' spines. He seemed perfectly calm. Too calm. He casually said he didn't know where they were. Maybe Shanann had taken the girls somewhere for the day. But Nickel knew this was impossible. Shanann would never disappear without telling anyone, especially when she had a doctor's appointment. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. When Chris arrived home from work that afternoon, he found Nickel and police officers waiting for him in his driveway. And that's when Chris began the performance of his lifetime. The performance that would fool millions of people watching on television. The performance that would make him appear to be a loving husband and desperate father. But could his acting skills be enough to hide the horrifying truth? The investigation was about to begin. When Officer Coonrod asked Chris about his missing family, Chris's response was chillingly calm. He said, "I have no idea where they are." And later he said, "She was going to a friend's house with the kids." But here's the terrifying truth. Chris knew exactly where they were. He had brutally killed them just hours earlier. He had disposed of their bodies in the most horrifying way possible. Yet he stood there, looking directly into the officer's eyes, and lied without hesitation. Officer Coonrod later said Chris seemed unusually calm for a man whose pregnant wife and children were missing. Too calm, too composed. But Chris wasn't done with his performance. He was just getting warmed up. Then came the first major test. Nate Trinastick, Chris's neighbor, had security cameras that faced the Watts house. "Let's check the footage," Officer Coonrod suggested. Chris agreed immediately. Why? Because he thought he was smarter than everyone else. He thought his plan was perfect. But this decision would become his first devastating mistake. As they watched the security footage together, something absolutely chilling happened. The cameras showed Chris loading mysterious items into his work truck that morning at 5:27 a.m. Large, heavy objects wrapped in bed sheets. Chris watched this footage standing right next to the police officer, knowing exactly what those objects were. His murdered family. Yet his face showed no emotion, no panic, no guilt, just cold, calculated calmness. But Chris's most disturbing performance was yet to come. On August 14, 2018, less than 24 hours after brutally murdering his family, Chris Watts agreed to do a television interview with Denver 7. He sat on his front porch, the same porch where his daughters had played just days before, and begged for their safe return. "I just want them back," he said, his voice breaking with fake emotion. "I just want to see them again." But here's the absolutely sickening truth. Chris knew they would never come back. Because he had made sure of that. As millions of people watched this interview, their hearts breaking for this seemingly desperate father, Chris was secretly enjoying his performance. He was getting off on fooling the entire world. But while Chris thought he was winning, investigators were already starting to see through his twisted act. Detective Tammy Lee noticed something very disturbing about Chris's behavior. When he talked about Shanann and the girls, he used past tense. "She was a great mother," he said. "They were such good kids. Not she is or they are, but was and were." As if he already knew they were dead. This was the first crack in his perfect facade. On August 15, 2018, investigators decided to spring a trap. They asked Chris to take a polygraph test. A lie detector test that would measure his body's responses to questions about his missing family. Chris agreed immediately. Why? Because psychopaths often believe they can beat any test. They think they're smarter than technology, smarter than the investigators. But Chris Watts was about to learn a brutal lesson. No one can hide from the truth forever. As Chris walked into that interrogation room, he had no idea that his world was about to completely collapse. The questions started simple. Did you kill Shanann? Did you kill Bella? Did you kill Celeste? To each question, Chris answered with fake confidence. No. But the polygraph machine was telling a very different story. After the test, Detective Graham Coder sat across from Chris and delivered the devastating news. "Chris, you failed the polygraph. Miserably." For the first time since this nightmare began, Chris Watts looked genuinely shocked. His perfect plan was falling apart. His masterful performance was being exposed. And for the first time, fear flickered across his face. But Chris wasn't ready to give up his lies. Not yet. Instead, he would tell even more twisted stories, even more desperate lies. Because Chris Watts was about to do something that would shock even seasoned investigators. He was about to blame his murdered wife for killing their children. And then Chris Watts told investigators the most disgusting lie of his entire performance. He claimed that Shanann had killed the girls, that she was the monster, that he had only killed her in a fit of rage after discovering their daughters' bodies. Every single word was another twisted lie. But this lie would become Chris's biggest mistake yet. Because investigators knew something Chris didn't know they knew. They had evidence that would destroy his story completely. Physical evidence that would expose every lie he had told. They knew exactly where the bodies were. And they were about to make Chris lead them directly to his horrifying crime scene. The question was, when confronted with undeniable evidence, would Chris finally tell the truth? Or would he continue his twisted performance until the very end? The clock was ticking. Detective Graham Coder leaned forward and looked Chris directly in the eyes. "Chris, we know you're lying. We have proof." For the first time since this nightmare began, Real fear flickered across Chris's face. "What proof?" he asked, his voice finally shaking. And that's when investigators played their ace card. They had been secretly tracking Chris's work truck using GPS technology. They knew exactly where he had driven on the morning of August 13th. Server Ranch, a remote oil field owned by Anadarko Petroleum, Chris's employer. The same place where Chris had unlimited access to oil tanks and burial sites. The perfect place to hide bodies where no one would ever find them. Or so Chris thought. Chris's twisted performance finally began to collapse. "Okay," he said, his hands trembling for the first time. "I'll tell you what really happened." And then Chris Watts gave investigators the most horrifying confession in Colorado criminal history. He admitted to strangling Shanann and in their bedroom while she was sleeping. His pregnant wife, the mother of his children, murdered in cold blood. But the true horror was just beginning, because Chris revealed something even more sickening, something that would haunt investigators forever. The children were still alive when he carried Shanann's body to his truck. 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste were awake. They saw their daddy carrying mommy's lifeless body, and they had no idea they were next. Chris loaded his dead wife into his work truck. Then he told his daughters they were going for a ride. Bella and Celeste climbed into that truck, probably thinking they were going on an adventure with Daddy. They had no clue that their mother's body was lying right behind them. They had no clue that this would be their final journey. As Chris drove toward the remote oil field, 45 minutes away, his 2 little girls were completely unaware they were traveling to their death site. When they arrived at the oil field, Chris told the girls to stay in the truck while he dealt with Mommy. He dragged Shanann's body from the truck and buried her in a shallow grave near the oil tanks. But Chris wasn't done. The worst was yet to come. He returned to the truck where his daughters were waiting, still trusting their daddy, still innocent, still alive. And then Chris Watts did something so evil, so unthinkable, that even hardened investigators would struggle to comprehend it. What happened next is almost too disturbing to put into words. Chris choked 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste with his bare hands. His own daughters. His own flesh and blood. According to his later confession, Bella's final words were, "Please, Daddy, do not do to me what you just did to Cece." She knew what was happening. She watched her little sister die, and she begged her father to spare her life. But Chris showed no mercy, no compassion, no humanity. He murdered the child who called him Daddy. After brutally killing his daughters, Chris faced a horrifying problem: how to hide their tiny bodies. He decided to stuff Bella and Celeste into separate crude oil storage tanks that were mostly full. Imagine the pure evil it takes to dump your own children into oil tanks like they were garbage. The access hatches on these tanks were only 8 inches wide. Chris had to force his daughters' bodies through these tiny openings. The scene was so disturbing that investigators would never forget it. 2 innocent children, who had trusted their father completely, now decomposing in crude oil 40 feet underground. Bella and Celeste's small bodies were pulled from the thick, black crude oil that had been their tomb for 3 days. The investigators who witnessed this scene said it was the most disturbing thing they had ever encountered in their careers. Chris Watts had fooled the entire world while his family's bodies lay rotting in oil tanks. The girlfriend of Chris Watts helped police crack the case by providing crucial information that sealed his fate. When news broke about the missing family, Nicole immediately contacted police, because she finally realized that Chris had been lying to her about everything. He wasn't getting divorced. He wasn't separated. His wife had no idea about the affair. Nicole had been completely manipulated by a cold-blooded killer who was willing to murder his entire family to be with her. Chris revealed that he had been planning to kill his family for weeks before he actually did it. This wasn't a crime of passion, it was premeditated murder. He admitted that he had researched how to dispose of bodies. He had calculated the perfect timing. He had planned every detail of his family's destruction. But the most sickening revelation was about how he killed his daughters. Chris confessed that after smothering 3-year-old Celeste, 4-year-old Bella had woken up and asked, "What are you doing to Cece?" She saw her daddy killing her little sister, and she knew she was next. Chris then smothered Bella while she was fully aware of what was happening to her. The pure evil of murdering a child who trusted you completely was beyond human comprehension. On November 19, 2018, Chris Watts was sentenced to 3 consecutive terms of life in prison without the possibility of parole for killing his pregnant wife Shanann and their 2 young daughters, Bella and Celeste. He was sentenced to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, 3 to be served consecutively plus additional years for unlawful termination of pregnancy and tampering with corpses. A father who murdered his entire family for freedom. But evil doesn't always announce itself with affairs and lies. Sometimes it hides behind closed doors, wearing the face of everyday normalcy. And sometimes, the only witness is a child who saw something they can never unsee. A green dragon that would unlock a family's darkest nightmare. On March 27, 2003, Bradford, Ohio, the farmhouse sat on 40 acres of Ohio land. Quiet, surrounded by cornfields, wind whispering through bare trees. Inside, it was even quieter. Jack Myers was 51. His wife, Linda, was 55. They were more than just grandparents. They were the only family little Dameon had ever truly known. Dameon's biological mother, Amber Hulsher, was just 16 years old when he was born. She was too young to care for him. His father was never mentioned in the case. Not in reports, not in court, not at all. Dameon's grandparents ran a small pizza shop in town, loved by locals, worked hard, helped neighbors and raised Dameon like he was their own. That morning, Jack and Linda never showed up to open the pizza shop. No calls, no messages, just silence. But at 9:15 a.m., something happened. Dameon, 4 years old, burst through the doors of his daycare, breathless and trembling. He told his teacher the unimaginable. My grandparents were lying in bed. Melted. The teachers didn't wait. They called 911 immediately. When police arrived at the home, they were met with a scene that would haunt them for years. The door was unlocked. The house looked still. But what they found inside shattered every illusion of peace. Jack and Linda Myers were found in their bed, brutally murdered. Blood soaked into the pillows, the sheets, the floor. The violence wasn't just deliberate. It was personal. Yet nothing had been stolen. No signs of a break-in at the front. But the basement window had been removed from the frame. The phone lines were cut. A size 7.5 footprint was pressed into the dirt outside. Whoever did this knew the house, knew the layout, knew exactly how to get in and how to silence a family. And yet they missed something. In the next room, just feet away, a child had been awake, pretending to sleep but listening to everything. And he remembered everything. He told officers later he saw a dark figure near his doorway. A green monster. A green dragon, he called it. What that meant, no one knew yet. But it would become the most important clue in this entire case. Because what Dameon didn't know was that the killer wasn't a stranger. It was someone he already knew. Someone the victims trusted. Someone who had a key to the house. But more on that later. Dameon's memory of a green dragon seemed like a child's confusion until detectives found a muddy green tracksuit in a discarded river bag. River bag was found outside the town, in which latex gloves, wet shoes, shotgun slugs, and a green tracksuit were there. That tracksuit matched Dameon's green dragon drawing. Suddenly, his childhood memory carried weight law enforcement couldn't ignore. Investigators traced the gift card used to buy the slugs, matched the fingerprint inside the latex glove, checked the tire tracks in the mud outside the farmhouse. Each thread pointed in one direction. A name, Gregg Allen Myers, the younger son of Jack and Linda Myers. Detectives started digging into Gregg's background. What they found painted a disturbing picture. Investigators found Gregg had been kicked out of his home, stuck in a bitter divorce, and drowning in debt. He had no job, no money, broken, but he still had one thing left, a potential inheritance. If anything happened to Jack and Linda, Gregg would be next in line to take over the farm. And then came the testimony a close friend, John Helmendaler, told police. He asked me where to get a shotgun, said he was going to kill his dad. That statement had once been brushed off. Now it echoed louder than ever. Detectives brought Gregg in for questioning. The interview started calmly, But by the final 45 minutes, he asked for a lawyer. He slipped. He contradicted himself. He couldn't explain the purchases. And most damning of all, he never asked what happened to his parents. Dameon's green dragon wasn't just a child's fantasy. It was evidence in motion, a memory, a match. But the battle wasn't over. It was only the beginning. What detectives didn't know yet. The true battle would take place not just in interrogation rooms but in court. The evidence was mounting. The confession was partial. But now came the real test. Could the state convince a jury that Gregg Allen Myers murdered his own parents in cold blood? In April 2004, the courtroom in Dark County filled with quiet dread. Friends, neighbors, and family members showed up, some in disbelief, others in search of closure. Gregg walked in with a blank face. No visible grief. No apology. He avoided eye contact with anyone who once shared Sunday dinners with him. The charges were severe. 2 counts of aggravated murder, each with firearm and silencer specifications. 1 count of aggravated burglary, and a mandatory death penalty recommendation. But the defense? They barely spoke. No opening statement, no witnesses. No attempt to explain away the shotgun, the slugs, the tape, or the gloves. The prosecution, meanwhile, painted a chilling picture. Gregg was broke, divorced, evicted, and desperate. He stood to inherit everything, if Jack and Linda were out of the way. And all it took was one early morning, a shotgun, and the belief that no one was watching. But someone was. Dameon. The boy's words echoed through the courtroom like a haunting bell. He had seen something no child should ever carry. Jurors listened as detectives testified about the river bag, the gift card, and the fingerprint in the glove. They showed photos of the green tracksuit, and then Dameon's crayon drawing was introduced. The green dragon he described? Now it had a real-world match. And still, Gregg never looked up. But behind the scenes, there was another battle brewing. One that had nothing to do with evidence. It started during jury selection, and it would become a legal fight that dragged this case back into the spotlight years after the verdict was read. The trial ended with a guilty verdict. Gregg Allen Myers was sentenced to life in prison without parole. But that wasn't the end. Because deep inside the court transcripts, buried beneath the evidence and the testimony, were cracks that would reopen everything. It started with the jury. During selection, some jurors brought up religion. One even said they'd judge guilt based on the Bible. Another claimed they didn't need to believe all the evidence, just part of it. A few even quoted scripture, and the court allowed it. The defense later argued that this biased the jury. They said faith replaced facts, but the appellate court disagreed. They called it non-prejudicial. Then came the confession. Gregg had been interrogated on March 29, 2003. He asked for a lawyer halfway through. But the detectives kept talking, and what followed were statements made under fear, threats of the death penalty, manipulation, pressure. The court ruled parts of that confession inadmissible. But the earlier admissions? They stayed. Even so, Gregg never once asked what happened to his parents. Never mourned. Never denied. Appeals went up the ladder. First to the state court, then to the Ohio Supreme Court. And every time the outcome stayed the same. The conviction stood. But there was still one piece missing. Because even with the verdict, even with the sentence, one child's life had been changed forever. And his story wasn't over. While Gregg Allen Myers began his life sentence inside Marion Correctional, Dameon Huffman was only beginning his own journey, which was marked by silence, nightmares, and the memory of a green dragon. At just 4 years old, he witnessed the murder of the only people who loved him. Today, he lives in Russia, Ohio, works as a painter, and when asked about the man who destroyed his world, he said simply, "I hope he regrets it. Not anger, not hate, just the voice of a survivor." A 4-year-old's memory became the key to justice. But what happens when a child witnesses horror, and no one believes their cries for help? What happens when the people sworn to protect an innocent baby become the very ones who destroy him? The next case will show you betrayal at its most unthinkable level. Jake and Rebecca Haro appeared to be living the American dream in Cabazon, California. Jake, 32, and Rebecca, 41, presented themselves as devoted parents to their 7-month-old son Emmanuel. Social media showed birthday parties, family photos, and pictures of domestic bliss. But behind closed doors, investigators now claim a horrifying reality was unfolding. On the surface, they seemed like any struggling family trying to make ends meet. Rebecca worked. Jake stayed home with baby Emmanuel. To neighbors, they appeared completely normal. Just another young family in Southern California, dealing with the everyday stresses of raising an infant. But what if normal was just a mask? What if everything you're seeing was carefully orchestrated? Because the truth about what was happening inside that house would shatter every assumption about parental love. On Wednesday evening, August 14, 2025, Big 5 Sporting Goods parking lot in Yucaipa, San Bernardino County. Rebecca Haro makes a frantic 911 call that would launch one of California's most intensive missing child searches. "My baby's been kidnapped. I was attacked. He's gone." Rebecca's story was heartbreakingly simple. She was changing Emmanuel's diaper in the parking lot when someone approached her. A stranger said "Hola" to her.
I had his diapers right here, and then someone said "Hola," and I couldn't even turn, and I don't remember nothing.
Then everything went black. When she regained consciousness, she was lying on the ground. Baby Emmanuel was gone. The response was immediate and massive. The San Bernardino Sheriff's Department mobilized hundreds of officers. Search and rescue teams combed through miles of desert terrain. Helicopters circled overhead. The FBI joined the manhunt. America watched in horror as another innocent child vanished without a trace. Jake Haro appeared on camera, his voice breaking with emotion. "Whoever took our son, please bring him back," he pleaded to the cameras. The desperation seemed genuine. The anguish appeared real. But investigators were already asking questions that would unravel everything. Within 24 hours, detectives began finding holes in Rebecca's account. Surveillance footage from the parking lot didn't match her timeline. Witnesses didn't see any attack. Medical examinations raised more questions than answers. But wait, there was something even more disturbing about this family's history. Jake Haro wasn't just a devoted father with a child. But instead of prison time, a judge gave him probation. The judge had said, "I'm giving you a chance. Don't mess it up." That chance may have cost baby Emmanuel his life. As days passed, the massive search operation continued. Hundreds of volunteers joined law enforcement. The community rallied around what they believed was a grieving family. Media coverage was intense. America prayed for Emmanuel's safe return. But behind the scenes, investigators were building a completely different case. They discovered that baby Emmanuel may have died up to 9 days before his parents reported him missing. Court documents now reveal prosecutors believe Emmanuel was killed sometime between August 5th and August 14th. 9 days. 9 days of living a lie while a baby's body remained hidden. The attack in the parking lot? Investigators found no evidence it ever happened. The kidnapping story? A fabrication designed to cover up something far more sinister. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Sources close to the investigation revealed something that would shock the nation. During what's called a Perkins operation, an undercover investigation technique, Jake Haro allegedly confessed to killing baby Emmanuel. But this wasn't just any confession. According to sources, Jake admitted to putting his son's body in the trash. A 7-month-old baby, discarded like garbage. The image is almost too horrific to comprehend. Yet even after this alleged confession, Jake continues to maintain a different story. In recent jailhouse interviews, he insists Emmanuel wasn't a victim of long-term abuse. He claims he was railroaded in his daughter's case, calling himself the fall guy. "The judge knows I didn't do it," Jake told reporters from jail. But if the judge knew he was innocent, Why would prosecutors now charge him with murder and other charges? While Jake allegedly confessed, Rebecca maintained her victim narrative. Even from jail, she appeared on local media, standing by her husband and insisting she wanted to be out searching for Emmanuel too. Jake said of his wife in that same jailhouse interview, "The media is her. She is a beautiful woman. She loves her children." But prosecutors paint a different picture. They allege Rebecca was part of an ongoing pattern of abuse that ultimately killed Baby Emmanuel. The woman who claimed to be knocked unconscious in a parking lot may have been conscious and complicit all along. Her story about waking up on the ground with her baby gone tugged at every parent's worst nightmare. But what if that nightmare was carefully constructed? What if those tears on camera were performance, not grief? Even as both parents sit in jail charged with murder, the search for Emmanuel's body continues. Jake reportedly assisted search and rescue teams near the 60 freeway and Gilman Springs Road in Moreno Valley. But when asked about it, he replied, "I want to talk about it, but I can't. I was told, don't do press." Hundreds of officers are still combing through California's vast wilderness, looking for a tiny body that may have been hidden for weeks. The resources being spent are enormous. The emotional toll on searchers is devastating. All for a child whose parents allegedly know exactly where he is. District Attorney Mike Hestron stated at an August 27th news conference, "The evidence shows that Baby Emmanuel endured on Yet Jake received probation instead of prison time, a second chance, a warning from the judge not to mess it up. The similarities are both cases involve Jake Haro. The pattern suggests something far more sinister than two separate tragedies. The case has split public opinion. Some believe the parents are grieving victims of a rush to judgment. Others see calculated killers who fooled an entire nation. The comment sections are brutal. The debates are heated. America can't decide who to believe. Evidence is so compelling that they charged both parents with murder while the search was still ongoing. Evidence that suggests a 7-month-old suffered weeks of abuse before his parents reported him killed. Today, both Jake and Rebecca Haro remain in custody without bail. Jake is held at the Larry D. Smith Correctional Facility. Rebecca is at the Robert Presley Detention Center. They face murder charges that could result in life sentences. Investigators believe they know who killed him. They believe they know the kidnapping was fake. But they still need to find a tiny body in thousands of square miles of desert and wilderness. Meanwhile, Jake insists from jail that God is with us throughout this investigation. He says he understands why people are angry, calling the allegations horrendous. But he maintains his innocence even as sources say he confessed to putting his son in the trash. But here's what will keep you awake tonight. The most disturbing question of all. How long was Baby Emmanuel suffering before his parents finally silenced him forever? Court documents suggest he may have been dead for 9 days before they reported him missing. Baby Emmanuel Haro's sister, a 7-month-old baby, discarded and still missing. Parents who fooled a nation with their tears. But the final case will show you that hatred doesn't always hide behind fake kidnappings. Sometimes it walks up to you in broad daylight, driven by the most poisonous motive of all: pure, unadulterated hate for who someone loves. March 7, 2014, Port Bolivar, Texas. 7:30 a.m. A beer delivery driver pulls into the parking lot of Fisherman's Cove convenience store for what should be a routine morning drop. But beside the dumpster behind the store, he makes a discovery that will shatter 2 families and expose a horrifying truth about what hatred can drive a father to do. 2 young women, both 24 years old, both from Houston, both brutally murdered. One beaten to death with blunt force trauma, the other shot execution style in the head. Their bodies were dumped like garbage behind a convenience store on the Texas coast. What the investigators didn't know yet was that the killer wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. The killer was their family member, and the motive? Pure, unadulterated hate. Brittney Latrice Cosby and Crystal Jackson, two women who found love in each other and built a life together in Houston's vibrant Sunnyside neighborhood. Brittney worked at Starbucks, starting her days before dawn to serve coffee to Houston's early risers. But her real job, her calling, was caring for her 90-year-old great-grandmother, Annie Lee Cosby, who had raised her when her own parents couldn't. Crystal was a security guard, strong and protective by nature. She was also a devoted mother to her 5-year-old daughter, Xania, a bright little girl who called Crystal's girlfriend Aunt Brittney. The couple had been together for 2 years, since February 24, 2012. They lived in Annie Lee's house, creating a multi-generational home filled with love, laughter, and hope for the future. But there was someone else living in that house. Someone who watched their happiness with growing resentment. Someone who saw their love as an abomination. James Larry Cosby, Brittney's father, a registered sex offender with a violent past who had just been released from prison 5 months earlier in October 2013. And he had a problem with his daughter being gay. March 6, 2014, Thursday evening, Brittney and Crystal climb into their newly purchased 2006 Kia Sorento, with one headlight burned out. They're heading toward Galveston for what should be a peaceful evening by the coast. But they're not alone on this journey. At 9:18 p.m., ferry surveillance cameras capture their silver SUV boarding the Galveston Boulevard ferry. The broken headlight catches the attention of a ferry worker named Ingram, who approaches the vehicle. What Ingram doesn't realize is that he's about to become a key witness in a double murder. He peers into the driver's window, noting the man behind the wheel. Later, he'll struggle to remember exactly what he saw that night, a struggle that will become crucial to the case. The ferry ride takes about 20 minutes. 20 minutes of crossing the dark waters between Galveston and Bolivar Peninsula. The last 20 minutes that Brittney and Crystal will ever see. But here's what investigators will later piece together, and it's more terrifying than anyone could imagine. By the time that ferry docks on the Bolivar side, both women may already be dead. Because James Larry Cosby's cell phone tells a story of a journey from Houston to Bolivar Peninsula and back to Houston in the dead of night. A digital trail of murder. When police arrive at the Fisherman's Cove convenience store that morning, they find a scene that immediately tells them this isn't where the murders happened. This is a dump site. The killer brought the bodies here to dispose of them. But killers always leave clues, and this killer left plenty. Near Crystal's body, investigators find something unusual, a decorative wooden shutter. It doesn't belong at this gas station. It belongs in someone's home, and it's covered in blood. On Brittney's head, a sheet. Not just any sheet, but one that matches a set from a very specific house in Houston. The medical examiner's findings paint a gruesome picture. Crystal Jackson died from a single gunshot wound to the head. But Brittney Cosby's death was far more brutal. Blunt force trauma, multiple strikes to her head and neck. Someone beat her to death with savage fury. But here's where it gets disturbing. The crime scene suggests Crystal was killed first, probably in the house. Her body shows she was beaten there, in that converted garage where James Cosby slept. Crystal, she was shot in the back of her own SUV. One bullet to the right side of her head, execution style. Think about that. A father shoots his own daughter in the head while she sits in a car. What kind of hatred drives a parent to do that to their own child? But there was someone else there that night. Someone who saw and heard everything. Someone whose testimony would become the most heartbreaking part of this entire case. Xania, Crystal's 5-year-old daughter.
Would you come sit right here for me? Do you like to color? Zanaya, what is the first thing you do when you get to school?
Eat breakfast.
Eat breakfast. And then what happens after you eat breakfast? Tell me everything that happened from that morning to the time you went to sleep.
The morning when I was getting ready for school at nighttime, my mama was in the car, me and her, and my mama said, stayed in the car, and I stayed in the car. So I was taking my mom so long, so I went in there to find out, but nobody was in there.
You said when you were sitting in the car, you heard something?
Yeah, it was like going like zzz. Like somebody was lasering somebody.
Like somebody was what?
Lasering.
Tell me who all was at that house when you were there going to sleep.
It was just me and her mama, and I forgot the other boy name.
The other boy's name?
That's Brittney's brother.
Brittney's brother. You don't remember Brittney's brother's name? Is he big like me or little like you?
He's tall.
He's tall. Did you ever see blood in his room? Tell me where you saw the blood.
There was blood splatter in his room. He just decided to kill my mother and his daughter.
Tell me where the blood splatter was in his room.
On his bed.
You saw it on his bed? Okay. Did you see it anywhere else?
On his floor.
And some on his floor? Did you ever hear anything from his room? Tell me everything you heard from his room.
A gunshot.
You heard a gunshot. Tell me how you know it was a gunshot.
Because he just, in his room, he just said, bang. He took them to outside and just shoot them.
Okay, did somebody tell you that or did you see that?
I see that.
This little girl was there, in the car, while her mother was being murdered inside the house. She heard Crystal being beaten to death. A 5-year-old child listened to her mother's murder through the walls of that house. He just assigned to kill my mother and his daughter. The words of a 5-year-old who witnessed something no child should ever see. As investigators dive deeper, they uncover a digital trail that leads straight back to one person, James Larry Cosby. His cell phone records reveal everything. On the night of March 6, 2014, his phone traveled from Houston to Bolivar Peninsula and back to Houston, the exact route the killer took. But here's the twist that breaks the case wide open. Days after the murders, Cosby gets into a car accident in Houston. Road rage. He calls 911. That 911 call gives police his phone number, which allows them to trace his movements on the night of the murders. The killer literally called the police and gave them the key to solving the case. When investigators search the Cosby family home on Annie Lee's property, they find what they're looking for: blood, lots of it, throughout James Cosby's converted garage living space. On his bed, on his floor, splattered on the walls. Someone had tried to clean it up. Fresh cleaning supplies, recent scrubbing, but you can't erase murder that easily. And then they find the smoking gun, or rather, the smoking fingerprint. Remember that decorative shutter found next to Crystal's body? The one covered in blood? It has James Cosby's fingerprint on it. His bloody fingerprint. The evidence is overwhelming. DNA from cigarette butts in the abandoned SUV. The sheet from his house covering Crystal's head. Blood throughout his living space. His phone traveled the exact route the killer took. But James Cosby maintains his innocence. March 13, 2014. 6 days after the bodies are discovered, James Larry Cosby is arrested and charged with tampering with evidence. Bond is set at $500,000. But investigators know they have their killer. They just need him to confess. For almost 6 hours, Cosby sits in that interrogation room, talking to detectives.
Where's the car? I can't help you with that. I don't know where the car is.
Only one print was found on that scene. Guess who it belonged to? James Larry Cosby Jr. No one else. Guess what we found in James Larry Cosby Jr.'s bedroom? His daughter's blood. Everything points back to James Larry Cosby Jr. And you expect us to believe that James Larry Cosby Jr. don't know? You need to man up. What happened to your daughter? So far, you haven't given up. You ain't told us how your print got out there on the scene.
Can't explain that.
Can you explain to me why or how in your room that carpet is saturated with fresh blood.
He never admits, but here's what's really chilling about James Larry Cosby. This isn't his first violent crime. He's a registered sex offender with a 1994 sexual assault conviction. In 2011, he was sent back to prison for failing to register as a sex offender. He was released in October 2013, just 5 months before the murders. 5 months of living in that house, watching his daughter and Crystal's relationship, letting his hatred grow. Family members would later say he did not like his daughter being gay. That's putting it mildly. This man's homophobia was so intense, so consuming, that it drove him to commit the ultimate betrayal, murdering his own child. August 2nd, 2016, Galveston County Courthouse. After more than 2 years of legal proceedings, James Larry Cosby finally faces trial for capital murder. The prosecution's case is methodical and devastating. Prosecutors said all the evidence leads back to one person. They present the bloody fingerprint on the shutter, the cell phone records, the DNA evidence, the ferry surveillance footage, the witness who saw the driver that night. But that ferry witness testimony creates a problem for the prosecution. Ingram, the ferry worker who stopped the SUV for the broken headlight, initially identifies someone else in a photo lineup with 100% certainty. Later, when shown Cosby's photo, he's only 50% sure. The defense argues there are 6 different puzzles they're trying to push together in this case. No murder weapon was ever found. No single clear motive was proven beyond the family's claims about Cosby's homophobia. But puzzle pieces don't lie. And when you put them all together, they form a picture of a father who committed the unthinkable. The defense tries to create reasonable doubt. They point out that the case is circumstantial. They argue that Cosby cooperated with investigators, talking for almost 6 hours without a lawyer. But the evidence is overwhelming. James Larry Cosby murdered his daughter and her girlfriend because he couldn't accept their love. August 10th, 2016. After 7 days of testimony, the jury deliberates for just 3 hours. 3 hours to decide the fate of a man who destroyed 2 lives and shattered multiple families. When they return, the verdict is swift and decisive. Guilty of capital murder. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. But even as justice is served, the true horror of this case becomes clear. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a moment of rage that got out of hand. This was premeditated hate. James Cosby didn't just kill his daughter and her girlfriend, he tortured them. He beat Crystal to death with his bare hands or a blunt object in his own living space while her 5-year-old daughter waited in the car outside. Then he took his own daughter, put a gun to her head, and pulled the trigger while she sat in the back of her own SUV. Think about Brittney's final moments. Sitting in that car, probably already knowing that Crystal was dead, facing her own father as he pointed a gun at her head. What were her last thoughts? Did she beg for her life? Did she ask why? We'll never know. But we do know this. James Larry Cosby looked into his daughter's eyes and chose hate over love. He chose murder over acceptance. But here's the final twist that shows just how calculating this killer really was. After committing these brutal murders, James Cosby had to dispose of the bodies. He loads them into the Kia Sorrento and drives to Port Bolivar. Why Port Bolivar? It's remote. It's across the water from Galveston. He probably thought the bodies wouldn't be found for days or weeks. After dumping the bodies behind that convenience store, he drives back to Houston and abandons the Kia near a strip club. He thinks he's covered his tracks. But murderers always think they're smarter than they are. And James Cosby wasn't smart at all, he was just evil. But perhaps the most damaging evidence, Xenia's testimony haunts everyone who hears it. Brittney and Crystal were just 24 years old. They had their whole lives ahead of them, plans to make, dreams to chase, love to share. Instead, they're buried together at Houston Memorial Gardens in Pearland, their love story cut short by a father's hate. Crystal's daughter Xenia was placed in the care of her grandfather, Reverend Ivan Jackson, who must now help a little girl process the unimaginable trauma of losing her mother to violence. Our hearts go out to their families and to little Xenia, who lost her mother to senseless hate. Rest in peace, Brittney and Crystal. If you want to see more deep dive investigations into true crime cases like this one, subscribe to Evidence Eye and hit that notification bell.